So the hosts over at MSNBC are beginning to have the conversations about, hey, what does a post-Joe Biden Democratic Party look like? And I think the reason they're doing this is because of a whole bunch of polls that came out recently. One was an outlier, but it was a really bad number for Biden. Trump winning nationally by 10 points. That's rough, man. In the average, he's up 2 points. That's rough, man. So there's a little bit of panic, a little bit of hair on fire going on behind the scenes among Democrats and Democratic sympathetic media. And so here's the Morning Joe host. Now, remember, this guy is supposed to be, he was a former Republican congressman, but ever since he left, he sort of slowly but surely morphed into the quintessential smug liberal elite. So here they are talking about a post-Joe Biden potential Democratic Party. And they're going to talk about Kamala. And man, this is quite a conversation. So you can see the headline here in Mediaite, quote, "She's black and she's a woman. Joe Scarborough calls out the real reason for anti-Kamala Harris chatter." All right, let's listen.
I have people telling me, Eddie Glau Jr. They're like, okay, so he's he's old and you know. I know, I don't know, because I want to make him say Kamala Harris's name. You know, if he's old and they're going to be looking at, I go, no, I don't know. Tell me. But it's always like, Kamala. What about Kamala?
What about her?
Well, there's sort of this undercurrent, like she's black and she's a woman, and that's why people don't like her, because she's a vice president. And what are we going to do? We need to change her. We need to. And I just go, where were you when Dan Quayle was vice president?
What? What about Dan Quayle, bro? What? What does Dan Quayle have to do with any of this? Have you considered William Howard Taft? How about Martin Van Buren, homie? You thought about Van Buren recently? Got some mean mutton chops, bro. Got some nice-ass sideburns. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, back to Kamala. What are you talking about? All right. I don't know how he's going to connect the dots on Dan Quayle, but let's see.
Nobody remembers this. George H.W. Bush, buried, sainted, like one of the greatest foreign policy presidents.
Why does Joe Scarborough not have lips? It looks like Mika took Scarborough's lips out and injected them into her own, right? That's what it looks like. As he's talking, look at his lips, because they're non-existent.
Of the second half of the 20th century, that guy in the 80s was destroyed by the press. Destroyed by the press. What about Al Gore? Like, everybody made fun of. I remember who was the actor? Who was that? The Republican actor, Tennessee. I can't remember.
Fred Thompson.
I guess the point they're trying to make is vice presidents are always hated by the media or something. I think that's the point he's trying to make.
I can't believe I forgot. Fred was at the Correspondents' Dinner, and he goes, I just got to watch. I'm very excited. I was in the cloakroom, man. You gotta watch out where you're putting your coat racks. I ran into this wooden coat rack, and I was like, and then I turned around, and he sticks out his hand. He goes, "Hello, I'm Al Gore." Invented the internet, all these other things. The Buddhist temple? Mm-hmm. Every vice president. We hear this all the time. Change your vice presidents. I'm here to say it's total nonsense. Nobody's ever voted against any presidential candidate because who their vice president was.
That is absolutely not true. Sarah Palin, John McCain. I know people in my own life who told me I was going to vote for McCain, but when I saw Palin was the VP, I couldn't do it. I voted for Obama. People I know said that to me. That's not true at all. This is like massive cope. The levels of cope are astronomical in this about Kamala Harris criticism. It actually is going to get worse, though. Wait for it.
And if you look at Kamala's numbers, they're not that far off from where every other mocked and ridiculed and loathed vice president has been.
Agreed. Remember potato? With Dan Quayle?
Yeah, exactly.
Potato. But you're absolutely right. But I think, going back to our earlier conversation, the cultural existential anxiety in the country makes this particular issue a little bit different, right? The idea that the possibility of a black woman being the president, right, enters into that kind of swirl of grievance and concern. And so even David's controversial piece.
Right.
It gave us Karen Bass and people to keep us from reading it as racial. But we know that the real worry here is, a black woman. That's the real concern.
Democrats have got to stop doing this. You've got to stop doing this, man. Look, the fact of the matter is Kamala Harris ran for president in 2020. When she got into the race, she got a bunch of positive coverage, and she was viewed as a top-tier candidate. In fact, she said that to other candidates to dismiss them smugly, like, I'm a top-tier candidate. They're not. Despite the high name recognition, the record in terms of the positions she held prior to running for president, despite the fact she was liked by the media and was a top-tier candidate, and she came out of the gates hot, despite all of that, her numbers imploded to nothing. It was so bad, she had to drop out before the voting in Iowa. It was that bad, y'all. It was that bad. Totally lost, totally listless, had no issue she was running on. You couldn't put any issue to her. Later, when she had already collapsed in terms of her polling, she desperately tried to come up with an issue that would define her. And you know what she settled on? We have to ban Donald Trump from Twitter. That was her thing. She made even Elizabeth Warren, she made look sympathetic, because Elizabeth Warren was like, what? Like, if you want to have a conversation about breaking up big tech and monopolies, I'm down for that conversation, but your whole thing you're running on is like ban Trump from Twitter? What are you talking about? So we have the recent history. We have her record. She couldn't even hang on to get to the voting portion of the election. Never mind the fact that now as vice president, they're saying, oh, it's just like the others. No, it's a little worse than the others. I grant you that many vice presidents have had terrible polling numbers and they weren't liked. This is sort of next level. And how do they explain all of that? They go, well, she's black and she's a woman. If she was a white man, she would still be hated. In fact, here, let's make a comparison. John Delaney also ran for president. Eric Swalwell also ran for president. Before that, Martin O'Malley ran for president. These are all white men. And the voting public said, not interested. Boring, don't stand for anything, get out of the way. And that's exactly what they think about Kamala. But instead of acknowledging it for what it is, they go, oh, it must be because she's black and she's a woman. Oh, so everybody's just racist. So everybody's just racist. It's such cope, right? It's like, she shouldn't look inward. She shouldn't address the fact that she doesn't actually care about any policies and doesn't actually stand for anything other than careerism. It's just, oh no, it's got to be a problem with them. It's got to be that they're racist and they're sexist, and that's why she's polling low. Can't be that every time she talks, it's colossal word salad that means absolutely nothing. Can't be that she comes across as incredibly insincere and inauthentic, however you say it. I think it's inauthentic. Can't be that. Can't be that. It's because she's black and she's a woman. And they're acting like, it's ridiculous that people are saying that she can't be the standard bearer moving forward. Is it? Is it? Because I'll tell you what. We can do like a power ranking list and determine who has a better chance of beating Republicans in a general election, etc. And as I've told you guys before, and I'll say it again, there are two scenarios of Biden stepping aside that I think could be worse. One of them is Kamala. The other one is Pete Buttigieg. Those are the two that I fear the most in terms of worse electoral chances in a general election than a Republican. Virtually everybody else, I'll grant you, is either on par with Biden or a little better than Biden in terms of their electability in a general election. But those two, terrifying. And they refuse to acknowledge that. Or what they do is just sweep it under the rug and say, well, it must just be because she's black and she's a woman. No, I don't think it has much of anything to do with that. I don't think it has anything to do with that. God, it's so desperate. It's so sad. And it's like, you would think that if this is the network that tries to help Democrats, right, and Democratic elites, you'd have to be more in tune with reality to at least try to pick a Democratic elite that wouldn't lead to you getting blown out by a literal fascist, a guy with 91 criminal charges against him, right? But no, there's no self-reflection. It's all like, and Scarborough's talking about the fact he's having these conversations with other Democratic elites behind the scenes, and they're like, I don't know about Kamala, and he's like, ha, you must think that because she's black and a woman. Jesus Christ. Pathetic. So sad. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.